What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing another genuinely strong team in the Remix Cup with Lycanroc, Midday form, Florges, and Togetic. Now, similar to yesterday's video, I did start with a negative set as I was still trying to figure things out with this team, but then I managed to go 13-2 in my next 3 sets, including a 10-game win streak. Now, Florges, whilst it is completely walled by fire, steel, and poison types, which are not that common in this meta, it does have the tools to core break a lot of teams in the meta. There are quite a lot of ground types and also a lot of Sucker Punch users, which of course you are going to resist the Sucker Punch and then deal super effective damage with Trailblaze up against those ground type Pokemon. I also think Lycanroc is an incredibly underrated Pokemon in this meta, and a lot of people just don't have a clue what charge moves it can run, so that surprise factor definitely comes in clutch. But anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. So far, are you preferring the Great League Remix Cup or do you prefer the Open Great League? Let me know in the comment section down below, let me know why, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. I'm heading into the first battle, and spoiler alert, this is actually one of the losses from my first set, and then I will go into the win streak. But anyways, leading into Diggersby, going straight for Trailblaze here. I don't expect the opponent to shield this up. Trailblaze hits for super effective damage. It already gets them deep into the yellow health range. I'm definitely going to shield, respect the damage. They go for the Scorching Sands. They don't get an attack debuff, and they swap into Darkspun. And at this point, I'm already thinking, yikes, it's going to be Diggersby Double Charm. That is a fairly common team, even in the Open Great League over the years. But at this point, I'm going to no-shield this. It's probably just going to be a Psychic Fangs here. Psychic Fangs is going to debuff my defense, but not doing too much damage. I go for 2 Fairy Winds here, just because I don't expect the opponent to shield. So the opponent lets that go through. They come back in with the Diggersby. I'm going straight for Trailblaze, boosting up my damage once again. Trailblaze gets the KO there, but they do have a second Charm user. It's Shadow, Alola, Ninetales, and this is certainly going to be tricky for me. We're going to come in with the Togetic. We are very spammy with Fairy Wind and either Psyshock or Aerial Ace, and despite the fact that Aerial Ace is stab, I do believe Psyshock does slightly more damage in neutral situations. So we go for the Psyshock here. We grab the first shield from the opponent. I will be able to make another Psyshock, but I do need to make a catch up against this Alola Ninetales, so I'm now going to overfarm, wait for the opponent to reach the charge move, but the opponent holds onto the energy. Very smart, and at this point they can just go for the Weather Ball, and of course from this range, Weather Ball takes out the Togetic, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG to up in there, and I have to say that's probably the only team that I faced in this meta where I was just like, oh man, really? Double Charm? But anyways, into the next battle. Awful lead matchup for me. Speaking of Charm, we do see a Primarina running Charm. We swap into Florges, and the opponent does actually have an answer in the form of Skeletor. So at this point, I'm just going to no-shield this. They go for Torch Song, boosting up their damage. I'm going to go for the Disarming Voice now. I don't go for 2 Fairy Winds just because I don't know if I will guarantee to get damage registration error there. So I play it safe. And at this point, I'm hoping I've put them into 3 Sucker Punch farm down range, but that is just not the case. So at this point, I have to shield my Lycanroc here as they go for another Torch Song. They could have gone for a Shadow Ball there. Don't know why they didn't, but it doesn't really matter. They come back in with the Primarina. We're going straight for Trailblaze, and then I will be swapping into my Togetic. So Trailblaze grabs the shield from the opponent. We swap into Togetic. They bank some energy, but they did not leave with a charge move, and that's going to be incredibly important to note. We go for the Psyshock. Psyshock grabs the final shield there, of course. We could be running Ancient Power, so that probably threatened that last shield. Psyshock number 2 gets them fairly low, and they will throw a charge move. So at this point, of course, I have to no-shield. They're at back-to-back Thunder Punches, but I can come back in with the Lycanroc. I can use my final shield here, and the opponent's Switch Clock is not up yet. We come out 1 away from the Trailblaze. The opponent does not have the Hydro Cannon loaded, and Trailblaze, super effective. It gets the one-shot up against the Primarina, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into next battle. See an Umbreon in the lead. So, I've got 2 Fairy types in the back. Definitely going to swap out. And the opponent is core broken by Florges here. So, going straight for Trailblaze. Trailblaze going to be boosting up the attack there. Of course, the first one doesn't do too much damage. And I'm actually going to shield the first move here just because I feel like there's no reason for them to bait with a Fire Punch. Might as well shield the first one, and this will force them to keep on going for Scorching Sands. Unfortunately, I do believe they debuffed my attack there, but I can boost it up once again and go for another Trailblaze. Trailblaze from this range doesn't get the KO. No, it barely does, and that is super unfortunate, but I will live a Scorching Sands here. Excuse me there. They do debuff my attack once again, which is very frustrating, but we can go for a Disarming Voice. And Disarming Voice here, we are single stage boosted, I believe. It does huge damage. The opponent over farming. They fire off the charge move eventually. The opponent goes for Foul Play, of course. From that range, it does get the KO. We can now come in with the Togetic, and I'm going to no-shield this first charge move. The opponent goes for Psychic there. Psychic does not drop out of fence, and they come in with a Claydol. So this is obviously a good matchup for me, but that Psychic chip damage is actually pretty huge because because now a Rock Tomb going to do quite a lot of damage in this matchup. At this point, I throw on poor timing just because I thought they were going to throw straight away. Typically, Rock Tomb users do like to just throw as soon as they get there, but they go for the Rock Tomb. We're able to hang on. I decide, actually, I'm going to save my shield for the Lycanroc, and you're going to see why. These Sucker Punches are absolutely chunking. They do debuff my attack, but it doesn't matter. I can just boost it up straight away with a Trailblaze. They swap back into the Umbreon. Trailblaze doesn't get the KO, so we get the Sucker Punch farm down, and now I can Sucker Punch, farm down the Claydol, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into next battle, we see a Dusknoir in the lead. So, of course, Sucker Punch hitting for super effective damage. You can see Astonishes doing just as much damage up against the Lycanroc there. But I can shield up the Shadow Punch. I'm going to go for one Sucker Punch here, fire off the Trailblaze, expecting probably going to grab a shield back from the opponent. But no, they actually let that go through. They come in with Primeape. I can come in with my Florges, and they come in with a Corviknight. Now, Corviknight, a huge core breaker to the team. But, of course, these sand attacks, they really don't do much damage whatsoever. I'm firing off back-to-back Disarming Voices here. Disarming Voice number 2 already gets them into the other health range here with just resisted damage. They fire off an Iron Head, but that does not get the KO, and these sand attacks, they're just not doing much damage. I can fire off another Disarming Voice, and now what I'm going to do is actually swap into my Lycanroc. Just force the opponent to use their energy. This is really important for me. If the opponent swap back into Primeape and then gone for a Karate Chop farm down, I could have been in big trouble, but now we can come in with a Togetic. Of course, we are double resisting the sand attack damage here. I'm waiting for them to throw. I'm definitely going to use my shield. The opponent probably going to have to swap back into their Primeape, and they do exactly that. Now they throw on CMP, winning CMP, of course. They go for Rage Fist. Rage Fist not going to do too much damage here. We go for Psyshock, and the opponent does correctly, just no shield. Their hope is going to be in Corviknight, but Togetic is just so spammy. I'm very close to back-to-back Psyshocks. First one grabs the final shield, and I'm able to reach another Psyshock up against the Corviknight. Psyshock number 2 gets the KO from that range, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we see Lycanroc into Darkspawn. So, I'm going to swap into my Florges. Of course, I have Sucker Punch, which is resisted damage. We go straight for Trailblaze here. As I do swap out, it takes one turn to do so. So, I'm one turn behind. I might as well go for the Trailblaze straight away, as that is actually good charge move timing. And again, I'm not going to shield this. Just going to be a Psychic Fangs. I'm now boosted. I'm going to go for a Disarming Voice. I'm hoping the opponent doesn't just double shield their Charmer, but they do. Of course, they do. It's what you have to do when you're running Charm and a Darkspawn in the lead. Just double shield it. Oh, so annoying. But either way, we're going to come in with the Togetic. And again, I'm not going to bother shielding because the charge move damage is just not threatening at all. But, of course, if they've got maybe like a second Charmer in the back, that could be very awkward for me. But anyways, going to fire off the Psyshock here. Psyshock gets them fairly low, and I will just commit to a very aggressive Fairy Wind farm down. The opponent is thinking about what to do here. They are going to come in with a Jellicent, so I'm swapping into my Lycanroc, and they come in with a Claydol, but it doesn't matter. We can go for the Trailblaze here. Of course, Trailblaze going to hit for super effective damage here. Trailblaze does big damage. It puts them into Sucker Punch farm down range, and I'm actually 2 away from another Trailblaze. We reach it up against the Jellicent coming back in. Trailblaze does huge damage. We've got a ton of energy on the Togetic. I can go straight for the Psyshock here. Psyshock takes out the Jellicent, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into next battle, Shadow Pidgeot in the lead. So, a good matchup for me. Of course, my charge moves are actually going to be all resisted up against the Pidgeot there, but the opponent doesn't know that, so they swap out straight away. We can come in with the Florges here, and honestly, I did not expect the opponent to shield, and oftentimes, I could have gone for a Trailblaze and actually just really dominated in these mid-game matchups, come out with boosted attacks, but in this case, I'm just going straight for Disarming Voice. They go for a Night Slash there, fine with me. It's not going to do much damage at all. I can now fire off another Disarming Voice. I wasn't quite sure if a Trailblaze would get the KO from that range, but honestly, maybe I should have gone for the Trailblaze there, boost up my damage, because now this Disarming Voice would have done so much damage up against the Pidgeot, but still, respectable damage there. I'm going to come in with the Lycanroc, and again, another Claydol in the back. So again, going straight for the Trailblaze here, but I will now have to swap into my Togetic. So Trailblaze grabs that final shield from the opponent. We come in with the Togetic, and unfortunately, they do throw before we do reach that Aerial Ace. So at this point, I'm going to no-shield the first one. We've seen already we can live a Rock Tomb reasonably comfortably as well if they haven't chipped with a different Pokemon first. We go for Aerial Ace, and Togetic able to win the race, actually winning CMP up against the Claydol. Aerial Ace number 2 gets the KO there. They come back in with the Shadow Pidgeot. They will fire off a last-second charge move, but it just doesn't matter at this point. I can shield. It's just an Aerial Ace. We go for one Fairy Wind, throwing on good timing, fire off the Psyshock. Psyshock gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on their next battle. We see a Tinkaton in the lead. Now, you know, I've been looking at this team thinking it is really weak to Tinkaton, and that is absolutely the case. However, I did not lose to a single Tinkaton, I don't believe. So, we're going to go and no-shield that first move as they go for a Bulldoze. I'm going straight for the drill run, and the opponent does not know about the drill run coverage. And so, they let it go through. It does huge damage. We now swap into our Flodges here, and we are going straight for Trailblaze here. This time, we go for the Trailblaze. Trailblaze, going to boost up our damage, and of course, I needed 2 moves to throw anyways to get the KO here, so it does make sense to go for Trailblaze in this situation. At this point, I'm now definitely going to shield the next charge move as the opponent does go for another Swift, and now I can massively overfarm. I'm going to throw just before they do reach the next charge move, just because I believe I'd win CMP, but I'm not entirely sure, so I play it safe. They come back in with the Tinkaton. We're going for another Trailblaze here. Trailblaze is going to be shielded, so at this point, I'm going to swap, catch the Bulldoze onto my Togetic there. Of course, that is going to be double resisted, non-stab, awful move as well. It does drop my defense, which is unfortunate. And I believe this is enough energy for a Play Rough. So I'm going to shield this, and it is the Play Rough. And the opponent's going to have a Pangoro in the back. There's literally nothing they can do there. And so they just concede the match. So, GG's up on there. Speaking of Pangoro, we're going to see it in the lead here. We're going to swap into Flourishes, and once again, we are seeing a Diggersby, so we can go straight for Trailblaze. Trailblaze, going to boost up our attack there, and as long as they don't get the debuff with the Scorching Sands, I should be able to get a KO with the next Trailblaze. But again, unfortunately, they do debuff my attack there, so that is really annoying. I think every single Diggersby got a Scorching Sands debuff on the first attempt up against my Florges, but either way, it's still okay. You're going to see I can still tank this, not super comfortably, but I put them into range where I can just Fairy Wind farm them down. I come out with back-to-back charge moves, but likely whatever they come in with, it will be able to farm me down in just a single fast move there, so unfortunately, only getting off a single Trailblaze, but that's okay. We are going to come in with the Lycanroc, as of course, it's not very good here, but it does have Trailblaze coverage, and of course, it's going to be awful up against the Pangoro. Now I can swap into my final Pokemon, the Togetic, and I will just shield this first charge move. The opponent goes for Hydro Cannon there. They are going to bank a little bit of energy. They swap, maybe trying to catch a Side Shock or something. I don't really know there, but either way, fine with me. I'm actually going to undercharge this because I realized they're quite unlikely to be running like a Rock Slide or Heavy Slam or something. So they go for close combat there. We get the Fairy Wind farm down. We're 2 away from back-to-back charge moves. We go for 1 Fairy Wind, throwing on good timing. Side Shock gets them low. A second Side Shock, of course, will easily be enough damage to take out the Primarina, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into next battle. See a Drifblim in the lead, so a great lead matchup for me. The opponent is going to stay in initially, eventually swapping into a Shadow Ampharos, and I'm going straight for the drill run here. Does the opponent respect the damage? No, they don't, and we get the one shot. And let's see what the opponent wants to do here. The opponent's going to come in with a Unnovan Stunfisk, so I'm going to bank a decent amount of energy, swap into my Florges here, and I'm going to no-shield the first charge move, as the opponent is going to go straight for a Mud Bomb. Now, you can see I can tank another Mud Bomb, not that comfortably, but I will just let it go through. I go for Trailblaze, and then I realize the opponent probably going to try and catch the next charge move, so I go for Disarming Voice. I'm now boosted. Disarming Voice does big damage there. They come back in with the Drifblim, of course. They will just barely outpace me, but that's fine. I'm actually going to realize that my Switch Shock is up. I might as well bank the energy, swap into my Lycanroc, go straight for Trailblaze here. You could argue I should go for Drill Run because I'm expecting the opponent will just let the move go through, but it doesn't really matter at this point. I'm just going to no-shield this. The opponent undercharges. They realize it's actually game over, so they're just going to concede the match. So, GG's up on there into next battle. We see Lycanroc into Skeledirge, so a great lead matchup for me. The opponent is going to be safe swapping into Greninja, and I come in with my Florges. Now, unfortunately, they are going to outpace me because, of course, they are going to swap. Well, they're going to swap straight away, and it did take me a while to swap out. And unfortunately, you can see Hydro Cannon did quite a lot of damage. You can see my Florges IVs aren't really ideal. I don't really know why I built this one. I think this might have actually just been powered up already, or sorry, evolved already and then traded to me. So I was like, you know what? I don't have to go through the effort of whatever the evolution task is for this Pokemon. I think it's like 20 Buddy Hearts or something like that. Either way, it doesn't really matter. We lose switch advantage. I'm just rambling on about like absolute nonsense. We're going to come in with a Lycanroc, and the opponent has a Shadow Swampert in the back. So Trailblaze, easy one shot. We get the KO there, and the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's up on there. Into next battle, we see another Drifblim in the lead. This time, a Shadow Drifblim, and the opponent is choosing to stay in initially. You can see these Astonishes are seriously chunking, though. I'm going to go for the Trailblazer, expecting to grab a shield, and we do exactly that. At this point, I'm definitely going to shield this. I should be able to Sucker Punch farm them all the way down, but the opponent swaps out into a Dugong, so I might as well go straight for a Trailblazer here, expecting to grab a shield, and then I will swap into my Florges. So, of course, coming in with the Florges, I'm going to no-shield this first charge move, as the opponent goes for an Icy Wind. That's fine with me. I'm now going to go for the Trailblaze there, throwing after 4 Fairy Winds, throwing on good timing. Trailblaze, not going to do too much damage now as I have been debuffed, but I boost up my attack once again, just for them to go and debuff me once again with an Icy Wind. But they come in with a Fortress, and suddenly things are going really badly here. Honestly, Fortress, one of the worst score breakers to this team that I can imagine. I mean, to be honest, most Steel types, as long as they're not Tinkaton and just don't understand that Lycanroc does have access to Drill Run, are going to be quite problematic for this team. But yeah, there's just not a lot I can do here. We go for the Rock Team, or sorry, they go for the Rock Team, and they're already at another charge move. I didn't throw straight away here. Doesn't really matter. Rock Team gets the KO, and Fortress gonna completely sweep the rest of my team. Of course, every Pokemon left is just one Volt Switch away from being farmed down, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's top on there. Into the next battle, we see another Tinkaton in the lead. So we're going to stay in this matchup here. The opponent once again going straight for Bulldoze, so that's fine with me. Going to no-shield this. Bulldoze, whilst it is super effective, and Lycanroc is definitely a glass cannon, we can tank that, so I will no-shield. But the opponent actually respects the damage from a Drill Run, and suddenly things are looking quite a lot trickier here. I'm going to no-shield this. I don't expect a Heavy Slam, or is it Heavy Slam? I don't really know. Iron Head or Heavy Slam, they're exactly the same charge move, actually. Same damage, same typing, same energy. I don't really know why they both exist, but either way, we're going to go for a Side Shock here. Side Shock still not doing much damage up against the Tinkaton. I'm going to force them to actually full send the Play Rough here. The opponent does exactly that, but at this point, we come in with the Florges, and the opponent comes in with a Spiritomb straight away, not even waiting to see what came in. And of course, I can go straight for Disarming Voice, grabbing a shield from the opponent, and at this point, I'm definitely just going to shield back here. The opponent goes for Rock Tomb, debuffing my attack, but that's okay. I'm still going to do enough damage here to get the KO with a Disarming Voice. I farm up to back-to-back charge move. Disarming Voice gets the KO. They come back in with the Tinkaton. I'm going straight for Trailblaze here. Of course, I'm already debuffed, so Trailblaze gets me back up to the regular attack stat, and I'm definitely just going to shield this. If they swapped out straight away into Spiritomb, it's very likely that they've got 2 Dark types in the back. We get the full farm down. You can see I did actually panic there. I tried to throw the Trailblaze, but it didn't go through, and it doesn't really matter at that point because I get the full farm down, and clearly whatever they had in the back was going to go down to the Florges. So that's the GG's to the opponent there. But into the next battle, we're going to see a Whimsicott in the lead. So of course, not very ideal for me. We're going to swap into Florges, and we're met with a Shadow Typhlosion. So here, what I didn't do compared to the last Fire type that swapped into me is I went for Trailblaze first and then Disarming Voice, and I should have done the exact same thing here. As you can see, Disarming Voice gets them incredibly low, but it does not get the KO. If I went for Trailblaze first, I actually could have put them into range where I would have been able to go for a Disarming Voice and get the KO. But either way, they go for Blast Burn. I don't get the Sucker Punch through there as I came in. Doesn't make a difference there, but they've got Shadow Swampert in the back. Now, at this point, what I probably should have done is thrown straight away, but I'm going to overfarm here. I'm going to continue to overfarm, farming up to back-to-back Side Shocks, always threatening like I've got a Dazzling Gleam, which of course I'm not running, but the opponent does not know that. Now I throw on CMP here. The opponent does also overfarm. So at this point, I'm going to shield. They go for the Sludge. I'm going for the Side Shock once again, and Side Shock should be grabbing a shield from the opponent. It does exactly that. Now I try to swap, catch the next charge move, but the opponent reads me like a book. They hold on to all of that energy. They get the Fairy Wind farm down up against the Lycanroc, and now the opponent can full send the Moonblast, dealing huge damage there. And at this point, it's going to be game over, unfortunately. Aerial Ace is not going to cut it up against the Whimsicott. I have to go for a full farm down, and even if I did farm them down, Swampert wins CMP up against the Togetic anyways. So GG's to that opponent there, very well played. Into next battle, we're going to see a Charge Bug in the lead. The opponent safe swaps into a Furret, and we can go straight into the Florges, go straight for Trailblaze. Trailblaze, once again, boosting up our damage. At this point, I realized they farmed up a ton of energy, so I shield, respect the damage, and they full sent a Hyper Beam. So if anyone farms up to the Hyper Beam, just definitely shield it there. Like, it makes no sense not to shield. And now we can go for the double boost. We can go for back-to-back disarming voices here. First one probably grabs a shield from the charge bug, and it does exactly that. But I'm able to reach another disarming voice straight away. So we go for it again, and it does huge damage. And they've got a Carbink in the back. So again, Flourish just putting in so much work here. Going for another Trailblaze. Trailblaze grabs the final shield. I can swap into my Lycanroc and again go for another Trailblaze. Trailblaze not going to do too much damage here as Carbink is incredibly bulky, but we've boosted up our attack here. We're going to be able to outpace them to back-to-back charge moves, especially if they go for a Moonblast. I can now go for the Drill Run. Drill Run going to do more damage than a Trailblaze. Drill Run gets the KO there. The opponent doesn't even bother throwing a charge move. They realize it's game over, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you want to take your support even further, you can now become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has already become a channel member. Your support is greatly appreciated, and with that being said, thank you all so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.